Just over 1 year ago, I was selected to represent my city on a study tour of Copenhagen, Denmark, with representatives from cities all across the United States. For those of you that haven't been there, Copenhagen is a dramatically different city than any city in the United States. The majority of the residents commute by bicycle, and the public spaces are continually filled with people that not only rely on these spaces for enjoyment and recreation, but also for making friends, meeting their neighbors, relieving stress, and recharging. This trip changed my life forever. My view on how cities built their public spaces, on how they affected their citizens, and the importance of citizen involvement in determining the design of the spaces completely changed. The people that you see in the photo that were on the trip have one thing in common. They were all there to make their cities better, and they all wanted to learn how they could do that. However, there's one thing that I don't have in common with all of them. All of the other people in this picture are directly tied to the design or process involved with building and improving public spaces. They're city planners and administrators, they're elected officials, they're transportation officials, they're parks and recreation leaders. And then there was me. I'm none of those things, but I am a public space user. I'm an average citizen that wants the public spaces in my city to be amazing. And that, being a frequent public spaces user, makes me an expert on how they should look, feel, and be used. We've all had great teachers, right? Well, Copenhagen became my teacher, that great teacher that I'll always remember. Great public spaces have well thought out, data-driven, and imagination-driven plans. The architects, planners, and elected officials who have the power to build these spaces play an incredibly critical role in the process and the end result. But what cities and towns have learned is that when they included significant citizen feedback in planning, their public spaces went from good to great to incredible to places that people travel to from all over the world to study. When citizens get involved, you get things like movie screens painted on the sides of buildings that bring entire neighborhoods together for an evening. If you ask my daughters what they like to do when they went outside to play, they'd tell you that they like to get dressed up and pretend that they're playing in a castle. So when we ask kids how a neighborhood park should look and then follow their advice, we should get a space where kids' imaginations go to the next level. We should build a castle in the park. When we see in the local news that our elected officials are shaping our city's budget, we often hear about wants versus needs. Unfortunately for most cities, public spaces, parks, playgrounds, and public squares fall into the wants category. What does that mean? That means that we all too often get underfunded, boring, and ineffective public spaces. In speaking about the social, mental, and emotional well-being of citizens, Gil Penalosa once said, "The CEO of a company may have more stress in their job than the person that mops the floor. But the difference is that the CEO gets to take vacations to amazing places. But all people need to visit amazing places. Cities have an obligation to make their public spaces those amazing places for their citizens." We forget about that. We forget about the fact that citizens need strong, vibrant public spaces for their well-being. We all too often think of public spaces as places where we go to kill time, rather than spaces that breathe life and energy into us. Every town or city, regardless of size, has public spaces, and every city has residents that rely on them. Cities that have beautiful public spaces that make their city great not only include a lot of citizen feedback and planning, but they also put the quality of their public spaces into the needs category of their budget, rather than the want category. And what they've found is that this isn't difficult and it doesn't have to be expensive, but it has to be thoughtful, intentional, and prioritized. We often forget that streets and alleyways, sidewalks, and public parking lots are public spaces too. In fact, streets and alleys were oftentimes the original public spaces in our cities. If you look back on historic pictures of your community's downtowns, what do you see? You see people, not cars, filling the streets. So think creatively about areas of your city that you wouldn't normally think of transforming. This is an alley in my hometown. It's your average alley. It's dark and dirty. It's where people go to take smoke breaks and to throw their garbage. But a group of my friends imagined that it could be better. They saw a public space that was a blank canvas, when everyone else thought of it as a part of town that should be avoided. So they rallied some local artists, they got some paint donated, and they painted the dumpsters and garbage cans. Then they held an event with music and food and arts and activities for people of all ages. They dedicated the alley to a longtime local business owner and officially named it. And what was the end result? This alley is now a bustling pedestrian walkway with more art and new development with alley-facing retail space in the works. This action by average citizens who cared about their home got involved and took action to improve a public space on a shoestring budget, and the end result was the possibility of private developers investing millions of dollars along this alley. Just down the street from this alley is our town square. This is a square that has traditionally served as a place to store snow in the wintertime. There was literally zero activity in the square after the first snowfall, until a group of us decided that we wanted something different there. Now it looks like this. In the first year of operation, with very little investment and very strong partnerships, we had thousands of people use our downtown ice rink. We worked with a local lumber company to get the materials for the boards donated. We worked with the park district to help us with the flooding and maintenance of the rink. So what's the common denominator between the alley and the town square ice rink? Citizens wanted better, and they found a way to get it done. There wasn't a request for proposals to see which design firm could come up with the best idea, but there was a request from citizens to build dynamic public spaces with very little money and a lot of creativity. So how do citizens do this? Well, I can tell you from experience what doesn't work. Writing angry letters to the editor demanding better doesn't work. Telling someone else what they did wrong creates division rather than the necessary coalitions to build these spaces. Breaking the law on vandalism doesn't work. In public space design and fitting, we have to remember that these spaces are all of ours. We all own them, and if we change something without going through the proper channels, someone will be upset, and when people get upset, they resist change even more. And waiting for someone else to do it does not work. If the people behind the alley transformation would have dreamed the change but stopped there, it would still be dark and dirty and a place for smoke breaks and garbage. So what works? Pilot projects. Pilot projects are an easy way to make a small investment and get a large return. This is one of my daughters standing next to a sign that I placed in a couple areas of town that were dangerous for pedestrians. I bought the sign online, so there was zero investment for the city. I didn't ask the city to put up a sign permanently. I just put it up for a couple of days. Practically no risk, but potentially a big reward. Painting the dumpsters in the alley also served as an easy way to measure how people would respond to public art in an area without investing a ton in large installations. Hold an event and invite people to come along for the ride and provide feedback. The more you get, the better and stronger the end result will be. And don't ask about money right away. All too often, good ideas are killed because people assume that it'll cost too much, so they don't even bring it up. Let your citizens' imaginations lead, and if the idea is great, you'll figure out a way to pay for it. Gather people in the space and ask them to imagine it exactly how they would use it. Pilot projects like painting dumpsters and building an event around it is something that you can go do this week with no money. And travel. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Copenhagen, but going that far isn't necessary. When we live in our cities, we get so used to how our public spaces are designed that we don't have the ability to imagine them any differently. Travel to the next city over from where you live and just look. The size of the city or town does not matter. Or next time you go on a work trip or a family vacation, make a point to take 10 minutes and just take pictures and jot down what you like and don't like about a public space that you come across. Then bring that list back to your city, stand in the middle of public spaces, and imagine the positive change that you could make. When you leave here today, I want you to remember 3 things. 1, you're a citizen and a community member, and as a citizen, you use public spaces, and that makes you an expert in how they should look and feel. 2, you and your neighbors deserve brilliant public spaces. You deserve to have a say in how they're designed. They are a need, not a want, and it's important that you tell your city leaders that you feel that way. And lastly, you can make a difference. You don't have to be a planner, an architect, an engineer, or an elected official to help shape your home's public spaces. You just have to care and be willing to put in some work and have some fun doing it. You can make a difference in how the spaces are designed. You can make a difference in how often that they're used. And in doing so, you can make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Thank you.